Mike here from Scuderia Audio, and today we're going to go over a new cool product which I'll demonstrate in just a minute. Now, if you've been watching my previous videos, you understand that I've been coming up with these plug-and-play harnesses that allow you to add a high-quality amplifier to a Ferrari model that doesn't have any amp, or if the Ferrari model has an amplifier, then I have a harness that allows you to replace that amplifier with a higher quality amplifier. Well, to be honest, some of these later model cars with the hi-fi option actually have pretty high quality amplifiers already in the car. Now, the speaker quality is horrible and the speaker placement is horrible, but the amps are actually pretty good. So, it's not always the best idea to just replace the amp. One reason is a lot of these newer amps in these hi-fi cars actually have more channels than the amps that they would replace, right? Now, you know that I have this real slick system where I can mount a high quality amp right above the battery in the passenger footwell. Well, there's not a lot of space in there, and you can only install an amp in there that's so big, right? So the largest amp that I've been able to find to fit in that area has 8 channels. So it's not really the best idea to replace your 16-channel hi-fi amp with an 8-channel amp just because it has a digital signal processor in there. Because, among other things, you're going to lose the ability to power many of the speakers already in the car. So, if you just upgrade the mid-range and tweeters to nice high-end components, those hi-fi amplifiers have more than enough power to drive those speakers, okay? As long as you don't ask the amplifier to drive a large subwoofer, you're golden, because it takes a lot of power to drive a large subwoofer. So what I've done is I've come up with some harnesses that allow you to retain your stock amplifier and retain all the speakers in the car, but this harness allows you to add an additional small dedicated subwoofer amplifier. So you can put a subwoofer in the car. Because a lot of people call me and they say, I like the sound in my car, it just doesn't have any bass, right? And so it makes perfect sense to just add a small dedicated subwoofer amp to get that bass. So, if you see my other videos, you understand that these harnesses are basically just pass-throughs, right? For example, if you have a Pista or a Speciale or a 458 without the hi-fi option, there is no amp. Right? There's tiny little amplification circuitry in the net, and that powers the speakers. So in that case, you add your own amplifier and you plug this harness into the back of the net, and it's a pass-through, except for I separate out these speaker wires so you don't have to hack your stock harness in order to separate the speaker wires, right? These have been selling like hotcakes. And then I have another video that demonstrates if you have these, some of these 8-channel amplifiers, right? Let's see. This is our simulated car harness, right? What you can do is you can unplug this harness from the amp and then plug this harness into one of my adapter harnesses that plugs into a better amplifier. But people are really liking this concept of just adding a dedicated subwoofer amplifier. So what I have I have these new add an amp harnesses, right? So with this, all you have to do, well, let's go back, okay? This is your stock amp. This is your stock harness, right? So all you do is you unplug your car's harness from the stock amp. Then you plug my add an amplifier adapter into the stock amp. Then you plug your harness into the other end. Right? You see that? It's just a pass-through, except for I'm separating out the speaker inputs, left and right rear channels, and these 3 wires for the power, ground, and turn on. So all you do is you mount a small dedicated subwoofer amplifier right above the battery, as I've demonstrated before on the little custom shelf, and then you just plug these wires into that dedicated mini subwoofer amp, and you're golden, you're good to go. Additionally, I've also engineered the add an amp harness for these monster, I've finally been able to pull it off. These monster JBL professional 16-channel amplifiers. They're a little bit more complicated. Well, they're not really more complicated. There's more connectors. There's 4 connectors instead of the 1, but it's the same principle. So instead of 1 pass-through, there's 4 pass-throughs. And the same concept, you just unplug your harness, the stock harness, from this amp. You plug my pass-through harnesses into this amp, and then you plug the stock harness in the other end of these, and then run the ends of these wires into your dedicated subwoofer amp. So now you can retain all 600 watts of power from this amp. You're still powering all the 12 or 14, however many speakers inside the car, but you also have the ability to send 200 watts to a dedicated subwoofer behind you. It's just fantastic. So, I have my portable system set up out there. So we're going to bring this gear out there and hook it up and check it out. So, let's go play with the stereo. Okay, so we're going to basically do the same thing I've done in previous videos. I'm going to hook up my portable system to show that we basically have a simulated Ferrari car stereo. And then I'm going to hook up the new add an amp harness and hook it up to a new dedicated subwoofer amp, hook up the amp to the subwoofer, and show that we have the same system with 200 watts going to a new subwoofer. I'll try to get it in a 1 fluid shot to show that there's no sleight of hand, no tricks. Okay, so once again, I have these Focal component speakers in these little bookshelf boxes. One of my subwoofer systems out of Natalia. These nice thin Morel carbon fiber 6.5-inch drivers that are going to simulate the rear speakers. My little faithful cheapy head unit with a thumb drive, power supply. This amp is out of a 488. It's an 8-channel amp. And then I have my simulated car's harness, right? So if we hook this up, right, we hook the harness up to the amp, then we hook up the input signals to the signals coming out of the head unit, right? And of course the head unit itself has to have power, ground, and turn on. Now this part of the harness, remember this is my test harness, okay? It simulates the harness in the car. So this plugs into my power supply and provides power, ground, and turn on to this amp. right? And then, so now all we have to do is hook up the speakers, right? So we'll do the left front, right front. Let's see. Left rear and right rear. Okay? We'll plug in the power supply. Remember, it'll take a few seconds for this amp to charge up. You won't have that problem in your car because, you know, in your car, your amp always has power and ground going to it. It's just that when you turn your head unit on, it sends 12 volts through this turn-on wire, right? So we'll put in our little thumb drive with our good old Scuderia audio theme song. And there we go. We have sound coming out of the 4 speakers, just like in the 488 or California, any car that's basically using these amps. Okay, so now we're going to unplug the power supply for safety. Now, all you have to do is unplug your car's harness from your amp, then plug in the add an amp harness, which is, remember, it's basically a pass-through. I just hijack the input signals to the rear speakers, power, ground, and amp turn on. So we'll plug this into the amp, then plug the car's harness into the other side of my harness. Then, here, remember, this is the little small but powerful 200 watt Moscone dedicated subwoofer amplifier on this shelf that mounts above the battery. So this is his power, ground, and turn on. Here's the input RCAs, channel 1 and channel 2. This side is for the output, so we have this little harness. So now the input signals are going into this dedicated subwoofer amp. It's set to only amplify the low frequencies that the subwoofer needs. And then the sound outputs the amp here. We're going to plug it into the subwoofer. Plug in the power supply. Again, wait a few seconds. And there we are. We've got the same exact system, only now we have a cranking subwoofer. 100% plug and play, totally reversible. Okay, so this is one of those monster JBL 16-channel professional amplifiers. I actually have it hooked up to a harness out of a wrecked 488. So to put together the add an amp system, this is what you do. You just unplug these 4 connectors, the inputs, right channels, left channels, power and ground. You hook up your new harness. You plug your stock harness into my harness. Inputs, right speakers, left speakers, power and ground. right? So now you have your pass-through. On the other end, we have the speaker outputs, the power ground, and the amp turn-on. So your kit will come pre-assembled. Remember, this is the shelf that sits right above the battery in the passenger compartment. In the passenger footwell. Right, so we have our Moscone 200 watt dedicated subwoofer amplifier with a built-in crossover. And this is a module that restores the output signals that are going to the rear speakers into its original form, so you get maximum output for your subwoofer. So all you do is you plug this connector into the key lock, you plug your power, ground, and turn-on connector into the Moscone amp. You notice it's the signals, it's already pre-assembled, the signals are already going into the amp, and then this is your output connector, so all you do is hook up the subwoofer cable to this connector that goes directly to the subwoofer that's behind the seats. And there you have it. Okay, well, that's about it. Now, the reason why I didn't hook up the big JBL 16-channel professional amp to my portable system is because the inputs are actually digital, not analog. So to pull that off, I would have had to have purchased a display screen, a NIT, a CAN bus controller box, and a harness. Even used, that would have racked up a bill north of 10 grand. But this whole concept of tapping into the speaker outputs and running the signal through a key lock and then into another amplifier, this is nothing new. I mean, high-end car audio shops have been doing this for years with these same amps in these same cars. The only difference is they had to hack up the output harness in the car in order to pull this off, because nobody had a plug-and-play harness for this until now. Okay, well, have a great day!